Hello everyone, welcome back to today's Analyst for 8th of October 2023, where we will be trying to analyze the most important articles from today's The Hindu and the Indian Express. So looking at the table of contents, we find the very first article is about the Israel-Palestine conflict which is going on right now. Next, we will be trying to look at some of the applications of nanotechnology in our day-to-day lives. Then we will be moving into the China, Bhutan and India complex regarding the border talks with China and Bhutan. Next, we will be trying to understand the GST Appellate Tribunal. And finally, we will be concluding the session with open market operations by the Reserve Bank of India. Now, before discussing, let us first state that the handout for this discussion is available in the description below. So do definitely check it out. Now, the first article is a very raging article because the Israel and Palestine is at war again. Because around 200 Israelis and 232 Palestinians were killed in the recent conflict that started on October 6th. And October 6th is considered a very holy day for the Israelis according to their Jewish religion. Now, the latest offensive have been carried out by the Hamas group, who launched a massive rocket operations, firing around 5,000 rockets, crippling even the famous Iron Dome of Israel. Now this Iron Dome, let me tell you, is a imaginary dome which is observed and protected by various anti-rocket defense mechanism by the Israel defense systems. Even this capability, which is a very highly advanced military equipment, this is not able to totally protect the Israelis. And this is important. Why? Because in GS2 we have this effect of policies and actions of various other nations on Indian interests. Now we will be trying to analyze this conflict through a very detailed analysis. And here the latest onslaught in this manner is being termed by Mohammed Deif, who is the chief of this Hamas group. He has said that enough is enough. Now he is obviously referring to the offensive which have been carried out by the Israelis on the Palestinians. And here we can see the West Bank, which have been occupied by Israelis according to Palestinians for over 75 years. And this is in addition to the Gaza Strip, which is on the banks of the Mediterranean Sea. Now let me tell you the countries which are surrounding this particular region. We have Egypt to the western side of Israel. We have Jordan. Here we have Syria over this side, and on the north we have Lebanon. So these are the countries which are surrounding Israel, and let me tell you, most of them and all of these countries are Islamic in origin. The Palestinian fighters crossed over the borders of Gaza and they totally decimated the civilians and the military and the Israeli militaries back there. And that is why Israeli Prime Minister has declared a state of war, and the Israeli government has said they will leave no one behind in this operation. But here let us understand the historic origins of this conflict. Now this is not a conflict which is around say 10 years or 20 years old. Now this is a conflict which is stretching around 100 to around 200 years, because the seeds of this conflict can be found from the very ancient times also, because the Jews were this community who were persecuted all around the world by various empires, by various governments all around the world. And that is why they generally had no country to call something as home, as their own home. So they did not have kind of their own home. They actually roamed all around the world, but this did not deter their success. They were very successful in their respective fields, and if you see the biggest world banks which are there, such as the Citigroup, such as the various banks which are dominated by the Jews, and even the various scientific achievements which are also achieved by the Jews. So we have to understand that they are these communities who are all over the world, but till around 1900s they did not have this definite version of their home. And that is why around in the late 1850s, so these idea of Jewish homeland grew popularity, because this Zionism, which is this call for a Jewish homeland, grew in demand. And here we have to understand the background in the Middle East situation. And the Middle East was kind of under the Ottoman Empire back then, and there this the Palestinian region which was back then, they were gaining this sense of nationalism. The Palestinians, which were Islam, following the Islam region, they were gaining this national identity of their own. And here we have to understand, from here till World War One, when the Ottoman Empire was on the decline, this region went to the British. And the British, they did what? They settled the Palestinians in this particular region. But over the period of time, from 1850s, this Zionist movement was going on, where the Jews were returning back to their so-called home at Jerusalem. Now, the British could not stop the influx of the Jews into Palestine. And when these, Palestine was infiltrated by the Jews, there were local clashes which was going on. So subsequently, the British tried to gradually limit the immigration of the Jews into this particular region. But the World War II would begin soon. The World War II would begin soon, where the world would see the persecution of the Jews at the hands of the Germany. Then this influx of Jews into Palestine grew much in number. Now the British could not stop it much longer, and that is why the United Nations and the United Kingdom in 1948, they proposed a partition plan of Israel, right? They proposed a partition plan in 1947 after a war that took place between the Israelis, that is the Jews, and the Arabs who were settled there. The Islam religion followers who were settled there, right? Then the first Arab-Israeli war took place in 1949, which resulted in Israel's victory. And most of the researchers, most of the experts suggest that it was with the West support. And this displaced around 7.5 lakhs of Palestinians, right? Now, according to the UN partition plan which was proposed, the territory were divided into three parts. If you can see here, the territory were divided into three parts. The mainstream Israeli, which is denominated in the blue color. Then it was divided into West Bank and Gaza Strip, right? It was divided into these three. But again, these particular plan failed, because after this war, Israeli forces won, and they started capturing more and more territories. So Israel first violated this partition plan, and even the Palestine forces did not agree to the partition plan ever, because they saw this partition plan as a transgression over their own homeland of Palestine, right? Now what happened? For this, up till the 75 years in this conflict, this is still going on right now, right? Even at the 1967 war, which took place again, Israel again, emerged victorious here. Then again in 1995, there was an attempt at peace, where the Oslo Accords were signed between the Palestine Liberation Organization and the Israeli. But the thing is that most of the Palestinians were not still happy with the Oslo Accords, because most of the Palestinians, they still failed that the Israeli was under the illegal occupation of Palestine, right? So this was their kind of distrust on the Israeli forces. And also we can understand the loss of lives in this particular war and conflict over the decades and decades of years. Now here we have to understand that the Palestinian people rose in various waves. They rose in resistance against the Israeli forces, and this resistance in Arabic word they termed as intifad. Intifad literally means to shake off. Shaking off whom? The Israeli, the illegally occupying Israelis in the Palestine region, according to the Palestinians. So according to Edward Said, who is a very prominent Palestinian American author and also an expert on this particular conflict, he says that these intifadas which actually took place in 2 waves up to now, and experts are telling that the recent offensive is a third wave. He says that this is a response of the people of the Palestine who were pushed to the wall by the bare-knuckled Israeli attempt to rob them of their land, history and nationhood. Right? So we have to understand that this is a response to shake off the Israeli occupiers. And the first istifa, took place from around 1987 to 1993. The second took from 2000 to around 2005. And here we can understand that they were again against the Israeli government, right? And also we have to understand that in recent times, the Israeli government, right, has this ideology of ultra-nationalist far right. This is the ideology which is kind of very against the Palestinians. And also the present government of the day and also some of the previous governments, previous prime ministers, they were highly critical of these Palestinians, where they should be vouching for peace. They are going in offense against them. And also the latest trigger for this conflict was this Israel raid on this Al-Aqsa mosque, which is there in Jerusalem. Right? So we have to understand this was the latest triggers, and this triggered whom? The Hamas. Now coming to the Hamas, these are actually the operatives which are carrying out this raid in Israel right now, and these is the largest Palestinian military Islamist group who have huge amount of weapons, who have huge amount of finance. Mostly by laundered money. And let me tell you, this is also the major political party in the Palestine region also. And let me tell you, in addition to this Hamas group is also designated as a terrorist group by the Israel itself, US, EU, UK and some other countries too. So these groups do not have that legitimacy abroad, but within Palestine, this is the major political party and the militant group. And this is why they have carried out operations around the Israeli. Now, this was founded in the late 1980s after the very first Intifada. Right? This Intifada, which was targeted at the internal metamorphosis of another organization, that was the Palestine Muslim Brotherhood of 1946. Now this brotherhood was generally formed to undo the Israeli occupation back in the 1946. But this this Palestine Muslim Brotherhood was not in the front battle always. It was the Palestine Liberation Organization, which even signed the Oslo Peace Accord with Israel, and the West actually also brokered the deal. In this handshake, we can find that the leader of the PLO is shaking the hands with the US president. So we have to understand the PLO in the 1960s, in the 1970s, they carried this offensive against the Israeli government. But the thing is that they kind of also acceded to the West and the Israeli in this Oslo Accords of peace. But this was not acceptable to the Hamas. And that is why they did not accept the Oslo Peace Accords, and they straight away resorted to violence. Right? And here, they were strictly against this two-nation solution which was proposed in the Oslo Accords. They were totally against this, that there would be Israel and Palestine. They were not for this. They wanted only Palestine. And that is why from then onwards, they carried suicide bombings, numerous bus bombings, and killed many Israelis, and also doing the same right now. Now here, we have to understand that there are some human costs to any conflict, right? We can understand the human cost of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can be shown in this kind of data. The total deaths from around 2008 to 2020 with reference to Palestinians counts to around 5,600 people who have lost their lives. With reference to Israelis, we can see the number is very few. So we can understand the human cost that this conflict is inflicting on is more on the Palestinians rather than the Israelis. right? So we have to understand the human cost is very high for the Palestinians. Then this is a conflict which is never ending. There are some conflicts which are going on all around the world, some in some countries which are never ending, such as the Nagorno-Karabakh crisis which is going on. Then this Palestine and Israel conflict. Then also we can understand back in our home, we have also the Kashmir issue which has been going on due to the illegal occupation of Pakistan, right? So these are some conflicts which are going on and on and on, and mostly we can find that these to end this conflict, even the United Nations have failed. They have desperately failed towards this conflict. So the efforts must be coming from the people and from the government within, right? Then we have to understand there is this Middle East angle also, because this Middle East region is mostly dominated by the Islam countries, and it is expected that in the coming months, in the coming time, that these countries will also grow against Israel. And this is very significant. Why? Because over the last few years, 1-2 years, we have seen that the Saudi is growing kind of close to Israel. In background of the Abraham Accords we can find, and also about the Western Quad, that the I2U2 organization, which India is also a part in, it can potentially also impact India's interests, correct? Then also we must understand there must be an appeal for peace by the particular organizations there. The government of Israel must find ways to find peace in this region, and also there is this responsibility of the Western countries to effectively foster peace in this region. Now, the next article is about the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, which was accorded to the Louis Bruce and Alexei Eximov, scientists who have pioneered the foundation of the quantum dots. Now here we will be talking about nanotechnology, because quantum dot is one of the applications of the nanotechnology, and this is a topic which was actually covered around 1 or 2 days before. And why this is important? Because in GS3 we have to study the awareness in the fields of IT, space, computers, robotics and nanotechnology. And let me tell you, UPSC has asked at least 2 times the very word nanotechnology and its applications in our day-to-day lives. In this question from 2016 we can understand that it is asking about why nanotechnology is one of the key technologies of the 21st century, and we have to describe the Indian government's mission on nanoscience and technology. So here let us understand the various applications of nanotechnology, and before let us understand what is nanotechnology at large. Now see, we have regular items such as tennis balls, right, sugar cube. These have various sizes, right? And now when we try to reduce and try to go to as small as length as possible, to the degree of 10 to the power 9th of a meter, that is around 1 billionth of a meter, we will be going to something known as nanoscale, the very scale to which we can compare the size of a particular DNA strand. So it is as small as a DNA strand in our body, and at this size, various elements, various atoms, various particles have different properties. Why? We have to understand that if we take a tennis ball, right, and if we take a dot size particle at the size of a nanometer, we have to understand that the tennis ball is having kind of a mass, right, and it can be influenced by gravity, right? It is a particular color because when light falls on the tennis ball, it appears yellow because it is reflecting some of the wavelengths of the light. But when we take the case of that small dot that is a size of a nanometer, we have to understand that it is a minuscule dot which is, say, neither interacting with gravity. It is at the very quantum level. Quantum means at a very small level, at a very small size, right? And at this small size, various matter can have various unique properties, right? For example, gold is gold in color in our real life, right? But when we look at gold particles, they emit red color. Why? Because now the particles have wider surface area, and this wider surface area which can actually reflect red color. But when we combine all these small particles together and get the gold particle, we get gold color, because each of the particles are only having small surface area and they can actually reflect a smaller around length of wavelength. So we have to understand these nanoparticles have various unique properties due to the size. So the biggest thing is the size, and due to their size we have various applications. Now when we combine technology with this science, we get this nanotechnology, and there are actually 4 types of nanotechnology. See, the first type is descending, when we try to go from the bigger particles to the smaller particles. For example, say when we have to manufacture a smartphone mobile chip, that is the processor, we are actually constructing this chip using silicon wafers which is visible to our eyes, and we are using those wafers using technology to construct something at a nanoscale, that is a processor. We have often heard about 6 nanometer processors, right? How are they constructed? They are constructed from big silicon wafers to a very nano level semiconductor, right? Then some nanotechnological appliances can also be ascending, or they can be made from a nanoscale meter to a bigger life size particle, right? For example, let us imagine, say you want to construct a home, right? You want to construct a house, and you say build that house using nanoparticles, right? So that you want such a house that is very strong, such as you may be wanting a house that is made out of graphene, which is one of the hardest materials in our entire world, right? So we have to understand we can build a house made out of graphene using ascending nanotechnology, or where we can build from a very small particle to a huge particle, to a huge matter. Then there is also something known as dry nanotechnology, which is using dry materials such as silicon, metals, coal, which are dry in nature. And we can also use wet nanotechnology, which is using wet substances, such as, say, when we are dealing with bodily fluids, when we are using bodily compounds, right, such as organs, intestines, these are wet. This needs an aqueous medium. So say when we are say making artificial organs, say we are making the artificial human heart, so we have to go to the nanoscale to make it, so that needs a wet medium. So that is your wet nanotechnology. And here we have various appliances. Applications, say from electronics, we make processors out of nanotechnology, such as, say, 6 nanometer processors, 1 nanometer processors, which are coming out in latest Intel processors also. Then we can also make something known as carbon nanotubes. See, these are the carbon nanotubes. The carbon atoms are arranged in such a manner that they behave in this particular manner, and they have various applications, right? They can give rise to superconductivity also. They can be superconductors because they highly transmit electricity. Then graphene can also be used as superconductors, which are special classes of carbons arranged in a particular manner. Then with respect to energy, according to Kyoto University, solar panels efficiency can be increased using nanotechnologies, right? Then we can increase the fuel efficiencies, because we can understand, because this is such at a small level, right? So electricity can be transmitted in a very proper manner. Then thermal insulation can also be possible according to latest research, because most of the heat is seen as a loss of energy. If we can reduce the amount of heat, right, and insulate the thermal capabilities of our engines, of our day-to-day life appliances, we can save energies also. Then this has use in biomedicine, in diagnosis of various diseases, treatment of various diseases such as neurodegenerative diseases, our neurological diseases, detection of cancers, killing and targeting cancer cells using nanobots. Nanobots are specialized fictional equipments as of now to specifically go to the affected site and treat the diseases. Then it can be also used in our medicines also, correct? Medicines using nanoparticles to specifically go to those areas of our body disease cells which normal medicines cannot reach. Then the environment can also be made better, because we can use air purification using ions, because ions can better attract pollutants, and these are ions at a nanotechnological scale. Wastewater purifications can be done with nanobubbles. These nanobubbles can be collecting the pollutants in the wastewater. Then nanofiltration system for heavy metals. When these heavy metals get into our soil, it creates toxic soil pollution. So if we can create such nano particles, nanofiltration particles, this can extract these heavy metals from the soil. And finally, nano catalysts are also there to totally regenerate natural environment systems, right? Then we can also use nanotechnology in food with reference to nano biosensors. These nano biosensors will be able to detect pollutants, right? Will be able to detect contaminants in our food, because they will be using some nanospectrography which will be detecting the amount of pollutant or say contaminants in our food. Then we can also use textiles, such as, say, all of you must have heard about Iron Man, right? How amazing it is that Iron Man's suit totally adheres to his body. And also, if you have seen Black Panther, right, you have seen how the suit totally takes the shape of our own body. Now, how this can be possible? Using smart fabrics, which is a fabric of the future, which can be totally tailored to each and every human being's unique bodies, right? So these are all the fascinating applications of nanotechnology. Now we have to understand these are these bright spots. The dark spots are in cases of some disadvantages. See, these are nanoparticles, these are the nanoscale, and maybe the environment cannot say get rid of these nanoparticles, because they cannot be, say, biodecomposed, because at this small level hardly there will be any bacteria or amoeba to decompose this. So they may be remaining in the environment, and the studies have not been done yet because this technology is very new, right? So it can be a potential environmental concern too. Then it can be also impacting the job market, because nanotechnology will be making things more efficient, and this can lead to more and more jobs forgone. But again, it can also create jobs if people are skilled in biotechnology, nanotechnology, right? It can also create a new industry of jobs also. And finally, it can also compromise the safety, because there are even nano weapons. Using nano bullets, we can potentially kill any animal life, including human beings. So we must be also designating particular safeguard mechanisms. And that is why the government of India has something known as the Mission on Nanoscience and Technology. This is a government of India initiative which is trying to boost India as a knowledge hub for nanotechnology in India. It is also trying to increase the amount of research and development in India and ensure that this research and development percolates to each and every strata of the science and technology ecosystem in India. Then it is also trying to commercialize it outside the labs using nanotechnology products, and also ensuring that there should be some rules of the game so that these particular concerns, disadvantages can also be taken care of. And finally, the government also will be trying to boost human capacity by skilling and training people on the uses of this technology. And we have to understand, India is among the top 15 Asian nations who are dedicating our focus on this nanotechnology. So with this, we hope that the Nobel Prize in Chemistry which went to nanotechnology in the coming years can be won by an Indian in the future. The next article is about the recent talks which are going between China and Bhutan. Why it is important? Because in GS2 we have India and its neighborhood relations. And here, in a latest interview given to the Hindu, the Bhutanese Prime Minister is telling that they are on talks with the Chinese government over the various disputed parts of Bhutan with China. If you can see, these are the various disputed parts. If you can see, these are the various disputed parts, which includes the Doklam region, which is very close to India's border and very close to Sikkim's capital of Gangtok. And also on the other side, it is also very close to Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. The Bhutan region is the Satking Wildlife Sanctuary. Now see, the Bhutan and China since 2017 have been engaged in border talks, because China, through its aggressive nationalism, it is trying to extend its borders by going into various territorial fights and claims with its neighbor countries, be it India and Bhutan, and also be it on the other side of the South China Sea with Philippines and other nations in that particular region. It is going on a territorial aggressiveness, which is trying to claim back territory by the use of force and not settle boundary disputes with the use of dialogues. That is why this three-step roadmap was proposed by Bhutan and China, and this talk is going on, and this talk was actually initiated after the Doklam crisis and even more intensified during the October 2021 after the standoff in the Galwan Valley with India and China. Now here, there is a very concerning thing which is coming out from the talks, that the Bhutanese Prime Minister is telling that there can be a possible exchange of lands in exchange for some land for Bhutan with China. It can be the case that, for example, that Bhutan can compromise this Pasamlang region of Bhutan to China for the Doklam region of Bhutan and also some adjoining regions of India. So this is directly threatening, because China is kind of, if this agreement is going forward, China will be gaining in control of this Pasamlang region, which can be posing threat to India's interests. So this is a thing which is going on between them, and India is expected to closely follow this movement. The China's claim is that this Satking Wildlife Sanctuary belongs to them because it is the wider aim of China to claim the entire South Tibet, which includes some parts of Bhutan, and India's entire Arunachal Pradesh, which is a totally illegal demand by China, according to historical records and agreements. Here, we have to understand, as stated earlier, this is China's territorial aggression. This is territorial aggression, and this is acting as a pressure tactic to force Bhutan to come down to China's heels. Because we have to understand, India and Bhutan are very, very close allies. They are very close allies that is spanning people-to-people relations, trade, hydropower and whatnot. Even Bhutan's army officers, civil servants are trained in India, and some civil servants are even trained at the Labasna, that is in Mussoorie. So we have to understand they are very close allies, but in recent times China is trying to corner Bhutan into a pressure tactic area. And you have to understand, India is playing a very important role in China's hydropower area, using various dams, using various projects, which is helping Bhutan in their day-to-day activities. With reference to trade, with reference to Bhutan, India is their largest trading partner, and also the tourism aspect is also very important, because India is one of the biggest sources of tourists in Bhutan. Though in recent years, Bhutan is kind of also limiting India's tourists, because Bhutan is claiming that the tourists from India are environmentally degrading their tourist sites. So this is again a concern which can be traced to China, because China is pressuring Bhutan. Then Bhutan's king JKN Wangchuk visited India recently, and here they also talked on the various boundary disputes, and they also talked on Bhutan's plan to build a special economic zone at Gelpyu city near Assam, which Bhutan is trying to link with Assam and India and have better connectivity. So these are some of the aspects on which India and Bhutan is collaborating. But on the other hand, China is also enlarging its tentacles and rushing into Bhutan for various malicious intent. And we have to understand the Doklam crisis which took place. This is the area of Doklam, this is Bhutan, this is China here, and India is here. In 2017, China directly came at aggression near Doklam, And since then, the area have been kind of cordoned off. Peace and stability is kind of in the region right now. But you never know China what it is up to in the coming years. And that is why India's relation with Bhutan and Bhutan's relation with China becomes very, very important, right? Especially in recent years, we are also seeing increased engagements. And in this recent interview, let me tell you, the Prime Minister of Bhutan said that there can be an land exchange agreement between these two regions. And the Prime Minister further went on to tell that theoretically, how can Bhutan not have any bilateral relations with China? The question is when and in which manner. That means the Bhutanese Prime Minister is directly telling that Bhutan cannot ignore China. How can they ignore China? How can they ignore bilateral relations? And on the other hand, how can they even ignore India? That is also a very important thing to observe. See, we have to understand that India needs to appreciate its regional leadership capabilities, and that is why countries such as Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, these are very crucial for India's strategic interests in this neighborhood region. To assert its leadership capabilities, India must try to reduce the tussles that these countries or engagements that these countries have with China. India must try to get into these talks with these nations directly and try to resolve them, because India wants to be a Vishwaguru in the near future. Then these India-Bhutan issues, for example, with reference to the tourists, with reference to some of the hydropower projects that are due completion, right, with some law enforcement agencies which are very active in Bhutan. Some anti-social elements are active in Bhutan. So this law enforcement issues must also be smoothened. And finally, the communication must be stemming from the leaderships directly. Next article, we have to understand something about GST Appellate Tribunal, because in the latest meeting of the GST Council, we have several changes with reference to some taxes on online betting. But the most important thing coming from here is that the GST Council raises the upper age limit of president and members of appellate tribunals. Now see, a tribunal is a quasi-judicial body. It is, established to reduce the burden on the judiciary, on the lower courts, on the high courts and the Supreme Court. Now here, what is this quasi-judicial tribunal of? It is to resolve the disputes with reference to the goods and tax regime in India. Now this is the indirect taxes in India, and there can be various disputes between the sellers, between the buyers of the good, and between the various stakeholders of this GST, right? So that is why this appellate body was set up in this section 109 of the GST Act of 2017, according to the CGST provisions. Here we have the resolution of disputes with reference to GST, and here there is one principal bench which is at Delhi, and there are various other regional benches which can be set up after due permission from the GST Council. And according to the recent Finance Bill 2023, which has been passed by the Lok Sabha, there have been various moot point to set up these GST appellate tribunals. See, the composition of the tribunal is that it will be headed by a former Supreme Court judge or a former Chief Justice of High Court. Thereafter, there will be 2 judicial members and 2 technical members. The selection panel for this tribunal will be consisting of the Chief Justice of High Court plus senior judicial member from High Court or retired High Court judge plus Chief Secretary and some other members. The president of the tribunal can have a tenure up to the 70 years of age, and this is the latest news. And the minimum age of appointment is 50 years. Then advocates are encouraged to enter more into this appellate region, because advocates up to 10 years of experience can become judicial members of these tribunals, right? So this was the latest new additions which were done. And here, the rationale for setting up this GST tribunal is to resolve disputes. According to the Code of Civil Procedure 1909, it is having the same powers of a court and a civil court for trying out the cases. It can hear appeal against the GST authorities, right? It is acting as an appeal. For example, if you have any issue with the GST orders of any authority of GST in India, you can find an appeal. You can file a complaint against that order to these appellate authorities. The ladder of the hierarchy that can be observed is, first you have to file a complaint to the GST authorities or the appellate authority. Then there must be an adjudicating authority. There it will be going to the appellate authority. Appellate tribunal will be then seeing this case. This is actually what we are discussing now. And from the appellate tribunal, if you are again not satisfied, you can go to the High Court and furthermore to the Supreme Court. Then it is also granted, this tribunal is also granted with many powers. Apart from the powers of the resolution of disputes, it is also having the power to recover the amounts due. If you are convicted of any frauds under GST, then it can also impose penalties, and finally revoke or cancel registrations of some illegal GST registrations or those who are not complying with the GST regulations. And in any dispute less than 50 lakh rupees, it can be going directly to the one-member bench of this appellate tribunal. So these are the important information that is important according to prelims information. The next article and the final article is about the open market operations. The context here is recently, as of Friday last week, the RBI announced that it may be going to take an open market operation soon. And this is taking the market by surprise because the retail inflation was around, say, 6.83%, which is kind of within the 4 plus minus 2 target of the inflation targeting of RBI. That means that maximum in India, according to RBI, the inflation can be 6% and the minimum can be 2%. So since the inflation is kind of near 6% around in the month of August, right, the market was not expecting this open market operations. Now why? Why is this very important for our examination? Because this is something concerning our monetary policy and RBI's functions. Now here, let us understand why this is important. We have to understand that the Reserve Bank of India in India carries out this monetary policy, which is the management of money supply in the country. Why management of money supply is important? Because the more money that is in the hands of people, it will be exchanging hands and creating more and more demand. And this more and more demand will be putting a pressure on the existing goods and services in the economy. This will be creating more demand and more increase in prices. Increase in prices is a very familiar phenomena which is known to us in the case of inflation. So more money leads to more inflation and more prices hurt the basic consumers and the common people. And that is why it is one of those objectives of the monetary policy under the RBI to adjust the inflation according to comfortable levels. The comfortable levels according to RBI and the government of India, it is in the range of 4 plus 2% of band, right? That means inflation can be maximum 6%, minimum 2%. Here, the RBI have various weapons to fight inflation. There are two kinds of tools, two kinds of methods. One is the quantitative methods using quantitative tools such as, say, using repo rates and using open market operations, and also qualitative methods such as using moral suasion or, say, persuading the banks, say, imposing more penalties. This is to increase the quality of its persuasion capabilities, right? Our interest here is to discuss the open market operations. See, imagine a situation when there is too much of money in the market. There is too much of money, so RBI can expect that inflation can increase in the near future, right? And also this is the case right now. Inflation is also hovering in the range of 6 to 7%, which may not be according to RBI's tests and preferences. Also inflation all over the world, central banks all over the world are also seeing this same phenomena. So see, imagine this situation, there is more money supply in the economy. More money supply will warrant the RBI to take actions. What actions? Either quantitative or qualitative. Now let us assume the RBI has chosen this open market operations. Here, due to more money supply, the banks have more money, right? So the RBI has done a very clever thing in collaboration with the government. RBI is telling, okay, let me give you some government securities. Let me give you some bonds, government bonds, right? And in exchange, you give me money, right? Now, what happened? When the bank is giving the money back to the RBI in exchange for the bonds, it is reducing what? The money supply in the economy, right? And it is done in an open market manner so that most of the banks can purchase these bonds, right? So, eventually the money supply will be reduced. Opposite will be happening when there is too much deflation. When there is no demand in the economy, people have very few money. To start with, people have very few money. Now, the RBI is telling, okay, you give me back those bonds. You give me back those bonds that you have with you. In return, take this money. And the banks, if they have more money, they will be giving out more loans, more expenditures by the people, and hence the economy will be boosting. So this is the primary way to fight inflation, that is sucking in the liquidity during inflation and giving more liquidity during recessionary times. So this is the prime purpose of this open market operations. And here, what is the need right now to RBI to embark on an open market operation right now? Because RBI, according to RBI's governors, RBI is targeting something known as active liquidity management. Because RBI still is saying that there is inflation, there is more liquidity in the market, right? There needs to be some tightening of this liquidity because there can be some inflationary fears in the coming times. So according to various economic tricks, calculations and management, so RBI is coming into this conclusion. Then inflation risks and financial stability concerns are there all around the world, not only in India. That is why we have to understand there are more FPI or say foreign portfolio investors pulling out their money from India. So there are these concerns. And finally, we have to anchor inflation at 4%, right? We have to settle inflation at around 4%, not be in this range of around 2 to 6, but be at the medium of 4. And finally, why did it surprise the markets? Because we have to understand the markets acts on something known as certainty. Markets acts on certainty. All of a sudden, if RBI is telling that we will be taking out, liquidity, taking out money, so that businesses will not be certain on getting loans tomorrow. So this can be announced any day, and this is not certain. So businesses may be suffering due to this. Then the October to December quarter will be seeing this festivity season, and in this festivity season, the core liquidity or those assets of the banks which are very liquid, such as deposits, such as gold, can be in high demand during this time of October to December, right? Because these are the times of say Diwali and the festival months, and here the people are demanding most of these expenditures, and this can further fuel up inflation, and that is why RBI is also trying to reduce the money supply. And also finally, RBI wants an hawkish tint. That means RBI wants to be kind of strict with reference to liquidity in the monetary policy. And so all these reasons are going into factoring towards this surprise declaration by the RBI. Now, we have come to the conclusion. I thank you all for attending the session very patiently. All the best for your future. We will meet again soon. Thank you.